Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Today we have Dr. Tim Jackson in the house. We are doing a podcast on mitochondrial health, how to improve your mitochondria. Dr. Tim, welcome to the podcast, my man.
Dr. Justin, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Very good. Well, what's going on, man? We were talking about some genetic tests pre-call with one of my patients. You give me some good feedback. I appreciate that. Let's dive into some genetic markers that we can look at to maybe glean a predisposition for having some mitochondrial stress or dysfunction. What would those be?
So looking at superoxide dismutase or SOD polymorphisms, along with polymorphisms in the glutathione pathway, whether it's GSTM or GPX, because both glutathione and superoxide dismutase are the two bodyguards that sit in front of your mitochondria. Our nuclear DNA is protected by histones, and so it's not as susceptible to oxidative damage.
And what are histones?
Histones are just proteins that help kind of coil up the DNA and organize it and also protect it. And mitochondrial DNA does not have those. So it's kind of sitting out alone by itself. And if you're deficient in glutathione and superoxide dismutase, then it's much easier for the mitochondria to become damaged.
So regular DNA has histones which protect, they coil up around the DNA, but mitochondrial DNA does not have histones that make it more vulnerable. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, got it. So what does that mean? What can we do to protect our DNA on the mitochondrial side from oxidative stress and damage?
Well, obviously, looking at things like stealth infections, mold, dysbiosis, blood sugar imbalances, all of those will create inflammation and ultimately stress the mitochondria. But in order to, protect it and upregulate the SOD compound or superoxide dismutase and glutathione, we can use things that upregulate NRF2. And NRF2 is just a cellular control switch that is responsible for detoxifying certain compounds, but also upregulating your antioxidant, your endogenous antioxidant production. So if we can do things that control many different reactions, that's a lot better than going, tit for tat, trying to, correct imbalances.
Okay, got it. So let's repeat those nutrients. So obviously superoxide dismutase is a big one. And where can we get that supplementally?
So there are several companies that have SOD in the capsule or tablet. I haven't seen any good data on how absorbable it is. So I try to do things that will upregulate it upstream instead of just trying to absorb. Even in an optimally healthy gut, I don't know how well absorbed SOD would be. But if you upregulate NRF2 and plenty of things can do that. But one that's specific to the mitochondria is molecular hydrogen. And molecular hydrogen, what makes it so unique is that it's really tiny. So it can get to where we need it to go, which is in the mitochondria.
Got it.
And it helps to scavenge a really nasty free radical called peroxynitrite.
Yes.
And not only that, it stimulates the production and creation of new mitochondria, which the only other things that do that are exercise and PQQ.
Excellent. Very good. What about fasting? How much does fasting have an impact on the mitochondria?
It has a tremendous impact in terms of upregulating, autophagy, cleaning the cells, that sort of thing. The only thing I would caution with fasting is that, if someone's HPA, thyroid, gut, gonadal axis is compromised, and you fast, then that may in fact worsen their metabolism and metabolic rate.
And that's the thing. I see a lot of people with adrenal issues and also thyroid issues, and they may even have some blood sugar stuff, and they're hearing all the rage of fasting and people getting lots of benefits, but that may actually exacerbate their issues, right? It can increase the HPTA or, increase that stress, and it could even potentially lower thyroid hormone more by increasing reverse T3.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times, you can develop hypothyroid symptoms
Hmm.
from adrenal insufficiency
Right.
and or cortisol resistance.
Totally. Good. So we have, you mentioned, was that the molecular hydrogen you mentioned? You mentioned the superoxide dismutase, correct? Uh,
Yeah.
what about various compounds like resveratrol or curcumin? What do you think about them? How do they do with the mitochondria?
So curcumin works on a control switch called NF kappa beta.
Mhm.
And basically, genes generally aren't turned completely on or off. It's more
Mhm.
like adjusting the volume on your stereo. And so curcumin helps to downregulate NF kappa beta,
Got it.
and that results in less inflammatory markers such
Mhm.
as cytokines,
Right.
TNF alpha, interleukin 6. And so curcumin works on several levels. It upregulates glutathione by up to 600%.
Mhm.
It downregulates NF kappa beta, so you're
Great.
not getting the inflammatory stress. And that also has some antimicrobial properties. And not to get too far off topic, but certain viruses retroviruses can get stuck in the mitochondria. And if you have a patient, or if you're someone who you've been taking a lot of CoQ10, you've been taking a lot of carnitine, you might even have done IV NAD, and you didn't feel a benefit, then it means your mitochondria are damaged and we need to repair them. And you tell me when you want me to go into the three-pronged approach of how to heal mitochondria.
That's great. Excellent. Is there any other supplements you can highlight before we dive into that? What about resveratrol? People have talked about that. What's your take on resveratrol?
Yeah, it's not very well absorbed
Mhm.
by most companies. Even if you add
Mhm.
bioperin to it or black pepper, there was a company that had transdermal resveratrol, but
Mhm.
I think the good old FDA shut them down. But I think there are a few products out there um, that have liposomal resveratrol,
Mhm.
and so that would be better absorbed for sure. But yeah, I mean, it works on multiple levels. It can help, with hormone metabolism, um, and free radical stress,
Mhm.
anti-aging, so many things.
Very cool. Any other supplements you want to highlight? Kind of low-hanging fruit nutrients you want to make note of?
Um, well, I would say L-carnitine or acetyl L-carnitine.
Mhm.
If you have certain polymorphisms, you might not be able to carry fatty acids into the
Mm.
mitochondria where they get burned for energy
Right.
through what we call beta oxidation.
Right.
And so acetylcarnitine is like an Uber for the fatty acids. It
Yeah,
picks
the
them up.
carnitine shuttle.
Yeah, exactly. And so, that's a supplement that helps mitochondrial health, helps improve metabolism. It can help burn fat, um, energy production, etc. Um, so yeah, I would say that that's definitely low hanging fruit. Um, and then, the molecular hydrogen, not to harp on that too much, but it does so many different things. Um,
How are you getting the molecular hydrogen? I know you mentioned Cindy Crawford has a skincare line with those compounds in it. I know you mentioned there's a molecular hydrogen machine that you've been supporting and using for a while. Can you go
yeah,
into how we can get more molecular hydrogen into our body?
So the company Trusii, Trusii, there's many companies offering molecular hydrogen machines, but this company, they have a really great machine. Depending on how much you want to spend, you just add reverse osmosis or deionized water, and it adds the molecular hydrogen to it. And so you don't have to keep buying a supplement, every month. It's a better
Totally.
return on an investment, in my opinion. The more expensive machine also contains a nasal cannula, so
Hmm.
you can breathe that in. And molecular hydrogen. So the highest concentration of mitochondria is in our nervous system.
Hmm.
The second highest concentration is in our heart. And so by improving mitochondrial function, we can improve brain health, brain fog, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and also have better perfusion to our tissues because we have better cardiac output.
Oh, interesting. Very good. Awesome. One thing I wanted to highlight too, you were talking about carnitine a minute ago. Carnitine is important because there's key amino acids you need to make it. Methionine and lysine are really important ones. And a lot of those amino acids are missing in vegetarian type diets. So if you're not eating animal products or you're not getting supplemental amino acids while being vegetarian, it may be hard, maybe missing some of those key nutrients that are important for making carnitine. Thoughts on
Right.
that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the process of methylation, which is, a collection of 100 or almost 200 different reactions in the body, helps produce CoQ10 and L-carnitine. And so if you're deficient in B12 or methylfolate, or your methylation cycle is disrupted because of heavy metals or environmental pollutants, then you won't create as much endogenous L-carnitine and CoQ10.
Interesting. And can you talk more about methylation? So a methyl group is a carbon and 3 hydrogens. So essentially when we methylate, we're just binding those compounds to whatever that reaction is, whether it's neurotransmitters or B vitamins. Can you talk kind of more about it? Like what's really happening kind of at a biochemical level inside of our cells when we're methylating, and where does this happen?
So it happens in all the cells in the body, and it involves not just B12 and methylfolate, but all the other B vitamins, as
Hmm.
well as mineral cofactors such as magnesium and zinc.
Hmm.
And you've probably heard of supplements like TMG or DMG.
Yeah.
Those are
Dimethylglycine, trimethylglycine.
yeah, those are major
HCl.
methyl donors that have been shown to improve cognitive function. Um, but methylation is responsible for everything from detoxification to producing glutathione to producing certain immune cells, the CD4, CD8, T helper, T suppressor cells,
Huh?
and also metabolism of your estrogens.
Mm.
So if you're not methylating your estrogens, you tend to recycle or reabsorb them. And methylation can get turned off independent of any polymorphisms. But if you have polymorphisms in methylation or MTHFR, then that certainly tells us that you at some point, in the right context, need both B12 and methylfolate along with the other B vitamins.
And so what's happening in the body? These nutrients they're affecting obviously brain chemicals, they're affecting detoxification. Like what's happening? Like just to keep it simple.
Yeah, so basically adding a methyl group helps with the creation of glutathione, but you're also getting neurotransmitters like GABA,
Hmm.
serotonin, and dopamine produced.
Hmm.
There's a condition called cerebral folate deficiency, where due to certain antibodies, you might have enough methylfolate or folinic acid in your cells, but it might not be in the cerebral spinal fluid.
Hmm.
And there are a couple labs, I think, that test for it now. It used to be mostly research-based, but those people tend to need higher doses of methylfolate.
Hmm.
And the other thing with B12 is that it needs a transporter, an Uber. So lithium orotate, the trace mineral, not the psychotropic drug, but it helps transport vitamin B12.
Oh, very cool. I know you mentioned that in our last podcast we did together. That's very good. So we have these carbon and hydrogens, and we need all these nutrients, dimethylglycine or HCl, essentially betaine is going to have a lot of that in there. Our methylating B vitamins like B6, B9, B12. Ideally, we're having folate, not folic acid. We're having methylated or LMTHF folate. We also may be doing choline, B1, like riboflavin, thiamine, niacin as well.
Yeah. So all the Bs, biotin, et cetera, all need to be there for the methylation cycle to occur. And there are many polymorphisms that we won't get into that can affect the methylation cycle outside of MTHFR. So it's really about the environment and the terrain that determines whether these polymorphisms express or not.
Very cool. All right, so let's go dive into your three-prong approach. So what does that look like, and how do you apply that clinically with your patients?
Yeah, so basically we've been taught that, okay, give more CoQ10, give more carnitine.
Yep.
And let's say you have a Ferrari and the transmission's out. Putting more gasoline in the gas tank is not going to help the transmission. And that's what you're doing when you're just giving CoQ10 or Carnitine. And that's okay, but you have to address the other aspects. And one of them we mentioned earlier, and that's protecting the mitochondria. How do we protect them? We make sure we have adequate glutathione, reduced glutathione, non-oxidized glutathione, and optimal levels of SOD or superoxide dismutase.
Interesting. Okay, got it.
And so the three-pronged approach is protect the mitochondria with the antioxidants, provide mitochondrial fuel, with L-carnitine, CoQ10,
PQQ,
PQQ, NAD, nicotinamide riboside,
yeah,
all those things. And then the third aspect or third prong of the approach is to repair the mitochondrial membranes. And so those get damaged from inflammation and also certain pesticides and petrochemicals. And you can use different supplements that have high doses of phospholipids in them to help remodel the mitochondria. And, it's been studied in patients with chronic fatigue syndrome to help the mitochondria for sure. So the three-pronged approach, just to summarize, is protect the mitochondria with glutathione, superoxide dismutase, repair the mitochondrial membranes with NT factor energy or a group of phospholipids that are going to rehab or rehabilitate the mitochondrial membrane, and then provide mitochondrial fuel via CoQ10, Carnitine, PQQ, NAD, etc.
Got it. So repair, protect, and fuel. So protection is glutathione, antioxidants. Would curcumin also fall into that category too?
Curcumin helps to upregulate glutathione.
So I guess it could, right? Because glutathione's antioxidant, so it would kind of have some protection qualities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And because it lowers inflammatory markers, that's going to put less oxidative stress on the mitochondria.
Good. Excellent. So we have that. So that's the protection. Then on the fuel, that's like B vitamins, CoQ10, Carnitine, PQQ, and then would like the Niagen or the nicotinamide compounds fit into that category?
They could potentially, but I think of them more as mitochondrial fuel.
Oh, that's more, fuel. Yeah, that's what I meant. Fuel. Yep. Correct.
Yeah. And so, they can definitely help. And, in the clinic, we've used IV NAD. It's great for drug detox.
It burns though, doesn't it?
So it should be between a 6 and 8 hour drip, and you have to do it 10 days consecutively. You can't miss a day. And that can help, for example, people who've taken the antibiotics that fall under the fluoroquinolone category.
A lot of damage.
A lot of damage. So IV NAD coupled with the NT factor energy can help the mitochondria for sure.
And then so we have the repair side, which is like a lot of so we have the protect, which is a lot of the antioxidants. The fuel is more of the nutrients we just mentioned, the NAD, the B vitamins, the CoQ10, Carnitine. And then repair, protect, fuel, and then repair. And the repair is going to be more glutathione and more of the sulfur aminos, correct?
So the repair is going to be more of the NT factor energy, the phospholipid complex.
Phospholipids. Okay. And then what does that mean supplement-wise? What supplements would you look for? And then what foods, what good phospholipids could we eat in our diet, consume in our diet that would help?
Anything like sunflower lecithin as a supplement could help, but there's actually a product called NT Factor Energy. Dr. Garth Nicholson helped develop it, and certain chemicals and pesticides can get lodged into the mitochondria, and according to him, the NT Factor Energy can take up to a year, but it can help displace some of these chemicals from the mitochondria.
Very good. Excellent. I love that. I mean, really good. Protect, fuel, and then repair. That makes a lot of sense. And then how are you applying this with your patients? So when someone comes into your clinic, are you just starting with diet and lifestyle changes first? What lab tests are you doing? How does this plug into your clinical model when you work with patients?
Yeah, so I mean, actually the UK has some really good mitochondrial testing because of the work of Dr. Sarah Myhill, um, and I think the lab's called Red Labs. But you can measure various markers here, serum CoQ10,
Hmm.
carnitine, pyruvate lactate, etc. You can look at fatty acid markers on an organic acids test. If
Yep.
they're high, that means they're not.
Exuberate or adipate,
Yeah, they're
flamellanate.
not. Yeah, it's not being transported into the mitochondria. So you might need some L-carnitine. And the difference between L-carnitine and acetyl L-carnitine, acetyl L-carnitine can cross the blood-brain barrier. And so it can work on neurotransmitters as well as mitochondrial health.
And then carnitine's like L-carnitine's more downstream, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you would use that to improve the carnitine shuttle and to help improve fatty acid oxidation and energy burning from fat, right?
Yeah, and in kids on the spectrum who have low muscle tone, we definitely use a lot of carnitine, CoQ10. The gold standard in traditional mitochondrial disorders is the muscle biopsy. But traditional medicine does a great job of finding things if they're on the extreme here or extreme here. But most of the world exists on this continuum. And just because you're on that continuum doesn't mean you don't have an issue that needs to be corrected.
And we can also use carnitine too to help modulate thyroid hormones too. I mean, if you're on the hyper side or on the Graves or hyper side, carnitine has some really great modulatory effects, and also with the lithium orotate as well. So two interesting mitochondrial compounds, but also help with modulating high thyroid function.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, definitely.
All right, so continue walking everyone through your kind of how you would work up a patient and incorporate this three-pronged approach.
So basically, the more systems that are involved in someone's symptom presentation, the more you should think mitochondrial dysfunction. And mitochondria, by making the mitochondria work better, everything in your body will work better. Mm-hmm. Now, off air, we were talking about the different Kendall Stewart that I trained with in Austin, Texas. He calls them mitochondrial buckets. Yeah. And so let's say you start today working on healing your mitochondria. You're not going to notice all the benefits that you will 6 months down the road. The first system that goes offline when the mitochondria are dysfunctional is the nervous system. So brain fog, fatigue, memory issues, etc. And that's one reason why the IV NAD is used for drug rehab, because it helps kind of rehabilitate the brain. And so those cravings for the drugs and withdrawals go down dramatically.
And what did you learn specifically from Kendall when you were down in Austin studying with him?
Methylation, at that time, back in 2012, it was all checking viral titers and using antivirals and leucovorin for cerebral folate deficiency. And the mitochondria at that time, he wasn't as comprehensive with it. But now I think he's gotten more so.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. All right. Next, what else?
So, outside of the three-pronged approach, the way, that I look at the mitochondria and work with someone with mitochondrial issues is to, again, upregulate glutathione. Some people may not be able to tolerate glutathione in the beginning.
And then what happens if that's the case and they can't even handle sulfur amino acids like methionine or cysteine or NAC or taurine, or maybe they can handle taurine, but what would you do? How would you incorporate those aminos? Would you taper it in? Would you incorporate binders? What would you do?
So I would look at the potential for SIBO and the production of hydrogen sulfide gas. I've seen that happen a lot. You can also, Amy Yasko has a list of, foods that are really high in sulfur. And so I would, you might want to go on a low sulfur diet for a period of time. But basically using like the trace mineral molybdenum.
Yeah, molybdenum.
Molybdenum, yeah. That will help that CBS polymorphism work as well.
Nice.
Or facilitate that enzyme working better. So if someone can't tolerate glutathione, we use it in lower doses or will back off completely, open the drainage pathways of the body, make sure the bowels are moving, we're supporting the kidneys, the liver, and lymphatic system, and then add it in.
So what does that mean? Because obviously we need glutathione to detoxify. It's a great antioxidant, right? It's a great protector of our mitochondria. So obviously we need it. So what does that mean? Like, do we have to just decrease it? Doesn't that decrease our mitochondria's ability to be protected because it doesn't have the histones, right? So what happens? I mean, is it kind of a short-term kind of mindset? Because
Well, yeah, it's a short-term
detoxification.
mindset for sure, because you definitely need it. But in people who are really toxic and their elimination pathways are compromised, then they're not going to be able to tolerate it. And
so the reactions are because we're mobilizing too much crap or too much toxins, essentially.
typically, yes.
And so when you try to upregulate like the lymph, are we giving like certain gentle herbs that may upregulate the lymph or the detox just to kind of generally allow things to flow better and not get stagnant? Do we add in binders? What does that look like?
Drainage remedies. I use drainage remedies to support the lymphatic system. You can use things like poke root, red root, but also, vibration plates, chi machines, mini rebounders to get the lymphatic system moving, dry skin brushing. But the drainage remedies for sure for the kidneys, liver, and lymphatic system.
Yeah, poker is great. I've used it on my wife before she had like almost a little bit of mastitis from breastfeeding, and that works really well. It really opens things up. I love poker root. That's great.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. So in general, Amy Yasko has the low sulfur diet. We'll put the links in for the Amy Yasko diet. So we kind of keep some of the sulfur down. We may do some breath testing to look at hydrogen sulfide. And why would that be a problem? What's happening with that SIBO or that hydrogen sulfide overgrowth that is affecting glutathione or making us more sensitive to sulfur amino acids?
Well, hydrogen sulfide is a mitochondrial inhibitor. And so it basically puts the body in a state of torpor or energy conservation. So
torpor?
Torpor, Torpor. So
torpor. Okay, that's a weird word. Never heard of it.
Yeah, and that was the way it was, described to me. But you can lower your body temperature, decrease energy production, cause major brain fog. As far as the breath testing goes, it can be helpful, but 25% of the time you get a false negative.
So you'd want to do conventional stool, or you want to do some more cutting edge stool testing to look for bacteria.
That and on the organic acids test, I think it's 21 hydroxyphenyl acetate. Yeah, that's the marker that can be indicative of SIBO. If you see that. And
phenyl acetate is interesting because that's also an oxidative stress marker too.
Right.
Interesting.
And so the SIBO, if you've had constipation for any period of time or an extended period of time, the only way SIBO can develop is when there is a lack of peristalsis or decreased peristalsis.
Right.
And so you get a migration of the bacteria that belong in the large intestines moving up to the small intestines, which should be relatively sterile. And so, you want to correct the large intestines. You want to optimize stomach acid, bile production, digestive enzymes, and, you can use herbs or antibiotics to treat the SIBO. But if you don't improve peristalsis, it's just going to keep coming back.
Interesting. Now, there are a lot of patients that are doing a lot of DNA testing these days with 23andMe. What are the big DNA markers you would look at to say, hey, there may be a mitochondrial issue or even maybe an issue with detoxifying? What would you look at genetically? What are the top 3 or 5 things you would look at and highlight and say, hey, this may lead you into thinking there's an issue?
So GSTM for glutathione. We can measure glutathione levels. It's best to measure the reduced to oxidized ratio because some people can't recycle glutathione. But any polymorphisms in the glutathione pathway, that's going to affect detoxification and mitochondria. Any polymorphisms in the superoxide dismutase pathway, that's going to affect it. A polymorphism called NDUFS. NDUFS, that affects fatty acid transport into the mitochondria. There's one called ACAT, ACAT, and that can affect the conversion of protein and fats into acetyl-CoA. And so that's a rate limiting step in energy production.
Mm-hmm.
And so vitamin B1 can be helpful in facilitating or bypassing that polymorphism in particular.
Yeah.
And then there is one called SLC. There's a whole family of them. SLC 16A1. And there are others, but those also have to do with fatty acid transport. And so, that's where you could look at blood or serum levels of L-carnitine.
Would MTHFR fit into this, or COMT fit into this at all?
It would, in the sense that MTHFR affects the levels of CoQ10 and carnitine.
And MTHFR does. So you tend to have lower levels, so you got to make sure those are higher.
Right.
Supported.
Right.
How about COMT? How's that affecting things?
So COMT, basically it affects, so it can create elevated catecholamines, and that can create a stress response in the body. And, long-term sympathetic dominant stress response will harm the mitochondria.
Can that also deplete dopamine too?
Yeah. What it does is people with COMT, they don't metabolize it as quickly, depending on the exact COMT. But dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine tend to be higher. And usually it's the norepinephrine and epinephrine that are more of an issue. Right. But yeah, it can for sure affect the mitochondria indirectly through that mechanism.
Great. So let's re-summarize that. We have our COMT and our MTHFR, right? You mentioned the NDOFs and the B1, importantly. With the MTHFR, you mentioned the carnitine and the CoQ10. Mm-hmm. With the COMT, we're working on decreasing sympathetic stress, breathing, not over-exercising, good food. Is there anything you'd want to also highlight to help reduce COMT expression?
Making sure that you check your estrogen levels.
Okay.
In men, checking estradiol. In women, checking E1, E2, and E3.
Yeah.
And measuring that compared to progesterone. But that can certainly affect or be a product of COMT.
Great. And then the other three again, the first three that you mentioned, I want to just make sure we have a good summary.
So the ACAT, ACAT, affects the production of acetyl-CoA, which is the first step in the Krebs cycle.
Krebs cycle, yeah.
And so vitamin B1, thiamine can be used for that.
Okay.
Other polymorphisms like NDUFs, FADS, those affect, and SLC affect the transportation of fatty acids into the mitochondria.
Yep.
And so extra carnitine may be needed.
Yep.
And then the polymorphisms that, may interfere with protection of the mitochondria are GSTM or any polymorphisms in the glutathione pathway, along with SOD polymorphisms.
Very good.
To upregulate those, we can use, again, molecular hydrogen. We can use things like topical glutathione or liposomal glutathione as well.
If someone wants to learn more about interpreting these genetic tests, do you have a resource or a reference that you like to go to?
I wish I had a comprehensive resource that I could tell you to go to that covered them all. Unfortunately, I don't. There might be someone somewhere. There are new apps coming out all the time, and all they're doing, it might say this is a neurotransmitter profile. This is a hormone profile. They're just reporting those polymorphisms that affect that particular area in the body. It's not a separate test.
Got it. Is there one source you could point us to?
MTHFRsupport.com. I helped them design their report. If you Google my name, Dr. Tim Jackson, I've done a ton of articles, interviews, podcasts, summits on methylation, MTHFR. So there should be a lot of free content available if they Google my name.
Excellent. Dr. Tim, if listeners want to find more about you and want to work with you, what's your website? How can they reach out?
healyourbody.org. So healyourbody.org, or my email, and I know it's long, but it's Dr. Tim, DRTIM 072981
Oh
at
my gosh.
gmail.com.
We got to shorten that up to like office@healyourbody.org or whatever. We got to shorten that up. All right. We'll put the links below. So if you don't recall or don't remember Dr. Tim's info, we'll put it below. So it's a one-click option for y'all. Dr. Tim, it's been awesome. We have 2 other podcasts with Dr. Tim. So feel free and go back and review those podcasts. A great treasure trove of information. Dr. Tim, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast, and you have a phenomenal day.
Thank you, Dr. Justin. You do the same.
Thanks, Doc.